Joining us this morning. My name is Tom Chapman with the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society. Really appreciate you all coming out on a beautiful, almost spring Wednesday morning. We're going to, I think, have a great program. Miranda's amazing researcher and knows a lot about women, a little about a lot, and we're lucky to have her. Want to appreciate the Jefferson Madison Regional Library with the Swanson Room. With our partnership with the Historical Society, we get somebody like Miranda to help us out in the library and take care of all of our research and archival needs. Also wanted to point out that this, come on in, we're just starting, no problem. This program is a same-page community read event in partnership with the JMRL, Jefferson Madison Regional Library, and also the Virginia Festival of the Book. And the Albemarle Historical Society is happy to be putting this on for you. So without further ado, I want to introduce Miranda Burnett, who is JMRL's Historical Collection Librarian. She will be presenting the program Into the Archives, Tracing Family History Through Property Records. So with that, Miranda.
All right, thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. Those who are here in person, but also those who are online. We are Facebook Living this, so I'm hoping there's more than just this room joining us today. For those who are joining us, of course, here in the room on your chair, you have today's outline. Those who are joining online, the outline is available on the ACHS library page website. And then all of the slides that are shown today will be up on the website, I promise, by 4 o'clock today, if you want to access them later. But today's presentation, I've divided it out into 3 sections, 3 different ways to think about your property and 3 different types of questions that you can ask. And so these are things like, what about the building? When was it built? What is the architectural style? Who built it? Another type of question, who were the owners of it? Who lived in that building? What are their stories, their histories? And then a third category about the history of the property itself. How does it fit into a larger history, into the larger county or city histories? What happened at that property or maybe in the area around the property? And so under all these categories, I'm going to give some examples of the different resources that can help answer those questions. Of course, all the resources can be used for all the questions, but I don't want to be confusing, so I've kind of tried to divide it out logically. And then finally, I'm going to go through a case study to show here's how you can put this and use all this information in real life. So the first one about the building. The easiest place to start is with the Geographic Information System. So most counties and cities have these available online. Really easy, just Google Albemarle GIS or Charlottesville GIS. And it'll give you information such as when the property was built, who owns the property, what is the zoning code for it. They typically will give a 30-year title history. So you usually can see back into the late 1990s as to who owned that property. Can give assessments, can also give any improvements made to the property. Did someone add a detached garage to it? And what year was that added, and so forth. It can also give parcel and photo sketches. And I put little stars there because at least on the Albemarle one, up until 2 weeks ago, I was able to access photos and sketches. And now when you go to access those, it says, these are stored at the clerk's office, and it doesn't give you the images anymore. So that's something I'll have to look into as why did these images disappear? But I'll show you later in the slide when I get to the case study what that did look like, at least for one of the properties I looked at. But the GIS, that is the first place to go to when you're looking to find out more information about the property you're interested in. Next, thinking about the building itself, what is the architectural style? One of the big books to use, the Field Guide to American Houses, is this Tudor Revival? Is this a Sears home? Is this, Second Empire style, like this one that's over on Ridge Street? And then there's other online architectural resources you can use, like architecturestyles.org, and then another architecture wiki called Archipedia that can give you some different architectural styles if that's one of your interests, one of your questions that you have about the building that you live in. The Sanborn maps. I cannot tell you how many hours I have spent looking at the Sanborn maps. These are available online at the Library of Congress. For Charlottesville, they go back to 1886, and then the most recent one available at the Library of Congress is 1920. The only caveat with the Sanborn maps is it only shows urban areas. So that 1886 Charlottesville, it's really only the downtown mall area. And as it goes through the different decades, it's really showing like Main Street, West Main Street, University Avenue. It really doesn't branch out too much more from the main thoroughfare. So that's the only thing to keep in mind in looking at the Sanborn maps. But the great thing about them is it'll show you not just what building was at the property, but what it's constructed of. Was it made of brick, or was it wood? Was it one story? Was it two story? For example, the image I put here, this is the block that we are on. What was the building that was right here where we are located in 1902? It was not the library. It was actually the synagogue was right here. Where the Historical Society is, that was a house. And then where Lee Park is, that was another house. So this can also show you how the landscape has changed over time. So the Sanborn maps can also be used. Remember I said all the resources can be used under the other questions. When you're looking like about the history of the property, this can tell you more about where it fits into the overall history, how the landscape has also changed over time. But then you can also see street name changes. For example, 2nd Street out here was not 2nd Street in 1886. That was Church Street, because there were 3 different churches along this street. So these are an excellent resource to give you a general idea of what the building itself was like at the property. Another little thought about resource are actually floor plan books. These have existed since the 1830s. In general, when these began, it was, and if you look at some of the older ones, it was an entire plan of how to build your house. And it would tell you exactly how many nails you needed and the exact lengths of board and how many of those boards. It told you every single thing you needed to build that house. So if you're interested, especially combining your building with the architectural style, you can look at these house plans to get an idea of also where your house fits into the time period and the general trends of that time period as well. The best place to look is archive.org. So many of the digitized ones there, and just do a subject search for house plans catalogs, and you will come up, I think there's about 150 of them under that subject search right there. And I gotta admit, they're just fun to look at too, if you just want to glance through. Photographs is another resource. Now these though are much more common for urban areas than for rural areas. Of course, the Library of Congress has a really good collection You can search for Albemarle County, Virginia. A lot of those come from the WPA project in the 1930s when they were researching the old houses. There's also the Library of Virginia. They have their Virginia Historical Inventory and then their Chamber of Commerce collection that also will show images. Also check out other repositories like universities. The website Archival Resources of the Virginias, which will cover not just the Commonwealth of Virginia, but also West Virginia and all of the historic repositories that may have photographs of your area. Photographs, they are difficult to find, but it is well worth the effort when you search for them. So about the owners themselves. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create a chain of title for your property. Of course, going back to that county or city GIS system to get you started on those first 30 years of the title. Eventually, though, you're going to have to make a field trip either to the city or the county clerk's office to do some research there. The clerk people are very, very nice and will assist you greatly in going through those deed books, kind of showing you how to look in the index, how to use their computers and so forth. So do not be afraid of going down to the courthouse at all. Another great resource though, and at the very end I can pull up this website, fadedcontours.com/Albemarle 1940. Now this is for county properties, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was Eric Erkentoff and Bob Vernon took the 1940 Albemarle property tax records and mapped them. And this map will show not just who owned the property in 1940, but also their race. And it's a wonderful resource to help with making that jump to doing your chain of title. Especially if you're unsure, are you on the correct track? It gives a good little pinpoint that you can make sure, you're on the right path. But I'll show that, bring up that website at the very end so everyone can see that, because that is such a fantastic resource. The other thing to be aware of is annexations. Charlottesville was not a city until 1888. So if you have a City of Charlottesville property, you may start your chain of title in the city, but eventually you're going to have to go to the county courthouse because the city did not exist before 1888. So just be aware of when different areas of Charlottesville or different areas of the county were annexed to Charlottesville, because that'll then determine when exactly you make that leap to the county deed books. So once you get that chain of title, then you can make the genealogical jump. And of course, going on either Ancestry or Family Search. Of the two, it really depends what you're looking for. If you're just doing a general genealogy search, Ancestry is great. If you are really looking to do some deep digging, I would recommend Family Search. Because they will have like the property tax records, they do have the digitized deed books available, will books and so forth. So when looking for the genealogical information, looking through the census, don't forget to look at the other census schedules, so the agricultural schedules or the slave schedules, or even the mortality schedules. Looking at land and property tax, those are very interesting because the land tax books will tell you if a building had been added to a property. If you see a jump in an assessment, then there's some sort of improvement made to that property. If you're in a home that was built before 1815, you have hit a gold mine, because the 1815 personal property tax The state decided they needed extra money to pay for the War of 1812, and they decided that year to tax everything they possibly could. And if your house was worth over $500, that was taxed. If you had mirrors or pianos or clocks or watches or carriages or anything you could think of, they taxed it. Only that year though. It didn't remain longer than that. So if you find something for the 1815 taxes, you found a lot of information for that person, for that property. One that we don't think of a lot, estates. So thinking wills, inventories, and chancery. Pretty much chancery is people arguing about dead people's stuff. But you can find a lot of information about property in there and the division of property. So look through chancery or see if there are chancery cases. Those are at the Library of Virginia, and they have an index online. And the Albemarle cases are digitized up to, I think it's 1850 right now. And they're working on digitizing them, I think it's up to either 1880 or 1890. So definitely check out chancery cases if you know your properties going back to the 1850s and so forth. Another place to find out information about the owners, city directories. The older city directories give owners or give residents occupations, so you can find out what it was that they did. They also have a street index in the back. So if you're wanting to see, well, who all lived on East Main Street, you can go to East Main Street and get the whole list of all of their neighbors. You can also see when an address is first listed. So if you're like, well, I know this was part of the city, but I don't know when it became part of the city, or maybe when this address got its first telephone, you can tell from the city directory. Newspapers are another great resource to find out information about the people who lived there. VirginiaChronicle.com is the Virginia digitized newspapers. And some different search techniques. Search for the address or the neighborhood. You can also search the house occupants. The big thing with that is to use initials. So try searching with the full name, but then search, for example, H.C. White, instead of Henry Clay White, H.C. White, to see if you find something. And then also find, especially if it's a rural property, try it with the owner's name plus the word farm. So Maupin Farm, see if you can find something that way. So those are just a few search techniques for newspapers. And at the bottom here, I put Daily Progress in stars. If anyone has tried searching the Daily Progress, they will know why I put that in stars. So the Daily Progress up until 1964 is digitized, but the way it was digitized, they digitized the microfilm, and it is not text searchable. So to search the Daily Progress, you either have to know the exact date that you're looking for, or you have to go through page by page. At the moment, there is no way to text search the Daily Progress. From my understanding, UVA is working with the Library of Virginia on a project to get it to where it's redigitized and will be text searchable. But as you can imagine, it takes a lot of time, a lot of funds, so it's gonna be a while till that actually happens. A good kind of workaround for searching the Daily Progress, next door at the Historical Society, if anyone's been there, we have our rows and rows of file cabinets, call them our vertical files, and it is just folders upon folder of newspaper clippings. So in the absence of an actual text search of the Daily Progress, come next door, we'll look in a family file to see if perhaps there is a clipping from the Daily Progress that we have in our files that could potentially match what it is that you were looking for. So the Daily Progress is still one of those kind of hit or miss newspapers to search at the moment. About its history itself and kind of how the property fits into the larger area. So there are the Albemarle aerials. And again, of course, I gave the web address, and you have it in your handout as well. You can also do just a Google search, Albemarle aerials. But these go back to 1937. And I think after that, there's a few in the 50s and the 60s and 70s. But again, it'll show you how that landscape has changed over time. This is one of my favorites. If you see where that number 18 is, right above that, that's the intersection of 29 and Hydraulic. And you see kind of Hydraulic curving around there on the right, going by where Whole Foods is today. And has anyone noticed there's another number 18 with like an oval around it? Any guesses what that oval is? Or anyone know what the oval is? That was a horse track. Yep, a racetrack. So if you go today behind Bodo's Bagels, there's a little kind of pocket park back there, and you walk back there, and you'll see the old grandstand that's still there. So you can see that we had a racetrack at one point in Charlottesville. That's now, you drive over it on the bypass today. So the aerial maps will just kind of give you an idea of what used to be there, how has that landscape changed over time. Now this one is a little trickier, the Mutual Assurance Society records, and these are available at the Library of Virginia. And these are tricky because these are only cities and towns since 1818. It got a little too expensive to insure rural areas, as you can imagine, fires and so forth. And so they only started insuring towns and cities after that date. But they'll show the ownership and who lives there. You'll get building diagrams, sometimes like this one. This is for a particular house in Richmond. You'll get this elaborate sketch of what the exterior of the house looked like. And then the image below, kind of the layout of how it was on the property itself and what the buildings were used for and so forth. So if you can find these, there is at the Library of Virginia, they have an online index. It is always worth searching just to see if one of those homeowners that you have in your chain of title, if it shows up in their index. Not many people think of these, but county road orders. So I have let me go back to my notes here. So it was the county court that was required to establish and maintain the roads. And they also appointed a supervisor who then gathered all the able-bodied men and said, okay, you have to work on the road for 6 days a year. And of course, the people who were working on it, they were the ones who lived along it. Of course, given this is Albemarle County, is it actually the landowners who are working it? No, it's going to be their enslaved people who are working along these roads. But with these road orders, you can see how the property fits into that larger transportation network that was here in the county. So you can see that there was a road from Moores Creek to Milton, which at one point Milton was a larger town than Charlottesville. Or the other one, you can see that they were trying to find a bidder to build a bridge across the Hardware. Looks like a place where the bridge formerly stood. So something happened to that bridge, and now they're trying to build another one there. But this will also give you, again, another idea of how that property kind of fits into a larger history. Maps, again, probably one of my favorite areas. Of course, this is an image of the 1875 Peyton map. Library of Congress has a fantastic collection of digitized Albemarle County maps. There's also the David Rumsey map collection. And it has a lot of early Virginia maps as well. And then the University of Virginia also has some digitized maps on their website. See the 1875 map, the smaller image, it's kind of a zoomed in. You can see the property owner, the name of the property, and so forth. You can see the main roads. So again, just giving you an idea of where it fits into the larger story. And then another resource, Civilpedia. And I'm sure many of us were told way back in the day, you don't use Wikipedia for doing research, but Civilpedia is actually a great resource for our local history. So it is community driven. Anyone can contribute to this. Anyone can edit it. It began, when was that, 2008, I believe, with Sean Tubbs. Oh, did you want to say something, Tom?
No, I was just agreeing.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay. But began as part of like the Charlottesville Tomorrow for a bunch of journalists to kind of keep track of the information that they were gathering, and then eventually went public. And now you can find just all sorts of information, not just about people and places, but events. So it is well worth it to then, once you have maybe a property owner or you know a neighborhood that you're interested in, to look on Civilpedia and see what does this say about the area I live in. And I'll come back to Civilpedia a little later as well. So the resources that I've given today, which is not everything that's in your outline at all, because we would be here all day if I were to do that. But how do we combine all of these resources, and what does this look like in real life? So I put together a little case study using my own neighborhood. So I'm in the Miner Hill neighborhood. I don't mind saying this because it's public record. Anyone could look me up anyway. So little Miner Hill neighborhood. Now for me, I am not interested in my house itself. It was built in the early 80s. It is architecturally boring. Here is that parcel photo that was on the county GIS, that gives, the only thing I found out is that my little duplex is called the Monroe, and my neighbor's is called the Washington. And I know like another neighbor's, I think one is named like the Hamilton, I think one was like the Franklin. And this is what I was saying, like the GIS, it had the parcel sketches and all of a sudden they disappeared. That's what all of a sudden disappeared. So I'm not interested in the building itself. I'm interested in who owned the property before, or more like who owned the neighborhood before it became the neighborhood. So the first thing I did was create the chain of title. So the developer of the neighborhood, of course, Charles Hurt, who I think most of you will know around here as created most of these neighborhoods. He had purchased the property from the Miner heirs, who they had gotten it from public auction from the guy they sold it to, Stephen J. Hunter, because he didn't pay them. But they had inherited it from their father, Reeve C. Miner, who had gotten it from his father, Dabney Miner. So, keep going back. I was able to trace it back to 1830. So the two names I was really interested in, Reeves Miner and Dabney Miner. And you can see that's who the neighborhood is named after, these two individuals. So who are they? Well, this is a clip from that 1940 Faded Contours property map. And according to that map, the area was owned by the Reeve C. Miner estate, and he's identified as African American, 68.40 acres. And you'll notice too, all of the green, the properties shaded in green, those were all black owned. So in terms of how does this neighborhood fit into the larger county history, that whole kind of Rio Road circle is part of a larger Black-owned community. So you see there's the Ivy Creek that's over there, Union Ridge Church, so that whole area is that part of the county. I said, what did this look like almost 100 years ago? So here's just the simple, topographical map from today. And then this is the 1937 aerial map. It was farmland. And if you'll see where the number 69 is. That is the property that he owned. And the little dot that's kind of right in the middle, that was the house. And so I know that when I drive up the hill into my neighborhood, I know exactly where the house used to be. And it's kind of hard not now to drive past it and kind of think of Mr. Miner every time I leave or go to the neighborhood.
Miranda?
Mm-hmm.
Just to orient ourselves, did you say that diagonal on the right is 29 and then the curve is Rio?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, precisely. Of course, going to the deed book, there was a very nice plat when it was sold to the Stephen Hunter. And of course, this deed book, the deed gave also a lot of genealogical information. So don't discount deeds as not having genealogical information. They can have a lot of that. It says where Reeves Miner, he died in 1926, his wife died in 1963. And then it goes on, I didn't list all of it because it was a very, very long paragraph, but it lists all of his children and their former names if they married and so forth, and kind of what happened to them. Did they sell their interest and when they sold it and so forth. So the deed book had a lot of information about the family themselves. Of course, going to Ancestry, went back, found them in the 1870 census. They were actually listed twice in that census. Once because the census was taken in July, and then the next time in October. They probably moved during those months. So they lived in one place, it was taken in July, they moved to a new place, and then the census came through again to be taken. At this time they didn't have the one census day the way we do now. It was kind of taken over months. Also found his death certificate, and then a little snippet of an obit in the Richmond Planet. The Richmond Planet was the Black Richmond newspaper. One thing that really kind of jumped out at me from his obituary, I was expecting, knowing that he had about 63 acres, to see that his occupation would be farmer. What does it say instead? Teacher. Wait a sec, what? He is a teacher. So then I started thinking, well, what schools would be around in that area? Right around there was the Albemarle Training Academy, or the Albemarle Training School. And this was the first Black County high school. And it just so happens we have over at ACHS, it's a photocopy of the 1990 reunion book. And there's a little snippet when it talks about the Miner and Shelton era. And it says, Professor R.C. Miner, a graduate of Storer College. Storer College was a black college in Harper's Ferry. Yeah. But then this also got me thinking, well, it says he's a citizen of the community. What do good citizens do? They're active in the community. Could he have written things in the newspaper? So I searched in the newspaper, and sure enough, he had written 2 letters to the editor of the Richmond Planet. And this first one, written in 1913, he starts out, please don't tire in telling the colored people to get land and establish homes for themselves. And he goes on, he says, get at least 40 acres and a mule, but wherever possible, get 60 acres and 2 mules. And of course, how many acres did he have? He's 63 acres. And then the one on the right, written in 1916, the big event that had just happened right before he wrote this letter, was a lynching that happened in Waco, Texas. And so this is a letter he's writing in response to a lynching. And he says, "We see lynchings or outrages or attempted humiliations are almost the order of the day, so much so we often wonder what will come next." And then the very end ends it with, "May the planet live long," so the newspaper of the planet, "live long to battle for justice and human rights." So now that I know this about my neighborhood, what did I do? I went to Civilpedia and started to create, it's not done yet, but I started to create a little entry for my neighborhood, because this is one of the best ways to get this type of information that we find out here. I just started one little line. It's located on Westfield Road off of Commonwealth Drive in Albemarle County, and eventually I will add in more information about the Minor family and so forth. But now you can see kind of how you can start with your own questions, the different resources you can go through to piece together the information, and then what you could potentially do with it, create an entry on Civilpedia to then share the information. This page did not exist. There was a whole list of Albemarle County neighborhoods. Minor Hill was not listed on there. So this was a brand new page listed just, 2 days ago, I think. All right, I saw your hand first.
Just a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Reese Minor,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, there's also a scholarship in his name that is available to high school students.
Yes. Where's it at?
I know that it's here in Charlottesville.
Okay.
UVA was handling it at one time. I know that it's available for students at CHS and Albemarle High School.
Good to know. Excellent. And you had a question?
About the census data.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that names listed in the census were kind of going down the road, that they went door to door. There
Yes.
was a sequence to that. Is that true for urban cities, urban areas as well?
Yep, exactly. Yep,
Okay.
exact same thing. Yep. And I saw another hand in the back.
I think the scholarship is the Minor Preston.
Okay, Minor Preston?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That is good to know. All right. Oh, another question.
I have two questions for you. First of all, wasn't there a car on the chain of custody, your title of custody for that?
Yes, there was.
This car was also a teacher at that Black Agricultural School in
Yes.
relationship to Ivy Creek, and I believe there were several cars engaged. I'm just curious if there was a relationship there.
I did not look to see if there was a relationship between that Carr family and the Black Carr family. Because what I did try to do in the limited time I have was to see who potentially enslaved the Minor family, which at this moment I was unsuccessful in finding that information. But in terms of your question with the Carrs, this is the thing with Albemarle County, we're all related somehow. So there's gonna be something there. It's just what it is. We don't know yet, yeah.
Also, one of the things that I had a question again, the Freedmen's Bureau sometimes will have records of property transactions early on between the Black community members and oftentimes even their former enslavers.
Yes.
And is that a resource that you found to be helpful here? Because I get really confused with where those records would be for each individual county, because there were multiple offices and it's not a clear. You won't necessarily find all Orange County records here or all Albemarle here. So
Yep.
any recommendations for navigating those?
The best person to contact is Shelley Murphy.
Okay.
She is the Freedmen's Bureau guru. Every Friday night they have a Freedmen's Bureau Friday on Facebook. If she knows where to find records, she's gonna know exactly, and she's gonna know off the top of her head. She's not gonna have to look it up.
Repeat her name again.
Shelley Murphy. Yeah.
Shelley just gave a presentation on this exact answering that question. And I'm guessing it was put on by the Central Virginia History Research.
That's right, yeah.
And they typically, a week after the presentation, publicize the recording.
Which I actually did.
Oh,
Yeah. I don't know how to get that information out. Other than, I know
Well, if it works, what we could do, if there's a way we could get it on the ACHS, the library website, underneath with the links that I put up for the notes and slides, we could put something up there if that
With
works.
showing permission, which I imagine you can get.
Yes, we
It's
can.
on the board, yeah.
We can arrange that. So, yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
So many. There, at one point previously on some of the aerials, I think there were agricultural aerials, more rural areas. Those partitions on the back of the image had a list of the property owners.
Mhm.
And I have not been able to find them. They sort of disappeared. They were at one point RDBA, and I'm not certain where they went or how to find them.
There's. Okay, so I promised I would show that 1940 property map. So from what I recall being told, those 1937 aerials, yes, on the back of the images had the list of property owners.
Right.
But at some point, the county, and again, Tom and Sterling, you can correct me if I'm getting this wrong, at some point, the county destroyed these records. But there were some that were saved, which are the blue, these little purple flags on this 1940. So then, let's see, I don't have a mouse, so that makes it a little.
This is recent?
30,
Some from Jose.
maybe like 30 years
I have some
ago?
archived ones
Do you
from
recall?
Jose, which doesn't appear there.
Then that means Eric doesn't have them, so he would love that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
downloaded them about 3 or 4 years ago and just might have to go back to find them again.
They look like that.
They're literally the back of the image for each, for the Crozet Greenwood and.
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of something else then, and not the
Yeah.
aerial photo.
No, it was definitely the aerial photo. It just,
Okay.
It just maybe I'll pull them and email him. I've emailed him before and say, by the way, do you need these?
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
But the Albemarle 1940, which again, you can see, yeah, if you click on like a property, it'll pull up, here's who owned it, their race, how many acres it is, gives you the parcel number and so forth. And so it's just very helpful, to help make sure you're on, if you're creating that chain of title, kind of help make sure you're on the right track. If you have, if you're looking at this one and you've made it back to John and Rosemary Rogan, you're on the right, you're going the right direction. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are the green icons up there?
So some of the icons, for example, let's see, is it this? So they'll show, for example, churches and schools, cemeteries, and social lodges and so forth. And then, of course, if I click on this one, this will tell me this was Council 19, United Order of CRA. That's who owned that property in 1940. And it's just, again, this is one I can spend hours kind of looking through. For example, what always seems to get me, anyone who knows when you get on I-64 heading east to Richmond, over off of 250 by Pantops, where you get on this on-ramp, there used to be a cemetery in 1940, right at the end of that on-ramp. Yeah. So there's a lot of information and a lot of gut punches in looking at these old records. But any last questions? Yes.
What does it mean to start a chain of title at the city clerk's office, and does it cost something?
It doesn't cost anything. It would cost if you were making photocopies, but it costs absolutely nothing to take out your phone and snap photos of the deed book. But to do a chain of title, you are starting with yourself as the property owner, and then saying, okay, I bought this from this person, and this person bought it from this person, and this person from that person, and just working your way backwards.
But, versus just going online and looking at the deed books through the links, you have to show up in person and fill out a form.
You don't have to fill out a form. Most of the deed books, let's see, the ones that are online, like through Family Search, go up, for the county, go through, I think, 1916. So anything from 1916 to today, you would have to go down to the county. And the city deed books are not online at all. So you would have to go down there to look them up and look at the indexes and so forth. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is more of a question about the cities. In the city, there are alleys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if in the library, do you have any information about how you can trace when the alley was from the ownership? Well, the problem with alleys, as you might know, is that it's not clear who owns them.
Right.
So is there anything in the library where people have done research on this?
Nothing off the top of my head is coming up on that topic. I think probably your best bet would be trying to look at deed books and plats to find those alleys. Yeah.
I have the plat, it's just not clear who owns it.
Right.
Do you think in the vertical file you mentioned?
With the vertical file, it would depend. For example, if there was an article in the Daily Progress. If not just if there was an article in the Daily Progress, but also if someone clipped that article and put it in the folder. That would be the other step too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had trouble finding the agricultural schedules.
Okay.
Do you have any suggestions on Ancestry or Family?
Yeah, so, now I'm going to say this with the caveat that I am going through this using the JMRL Wi-Fi, which means I can access Ancestry this way. So you may have to go through like a different step when you're doing it at home. But usually, once you get to the page, if you go down to the search census, search now, and then usually they'll give all of the data collections down here, and go down to the federal non-population schedule. And of course now oh, here we go. It's like now the Wi-Fi decides to cut off. And then you can go down Virginia, and then choose which schedule type you want, agriculture, and then which years and so forth. So, yeah. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming out. Hope you got some good information, and good luck with your property search.
Thank you.
Doesn't pertain because I moved the house from Chesapeake.